Well, good morning. This is Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. My name is Brian Anderson. I'm a pastor here in Rancho Cordova, California. And we're in a series that I'm calling Commonly Misunderstood Passages. Today we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 18, verses 19 and 20. And this is what it says. Jesus says here, "Again I say to you that if two of you agree on earth about anything that they may ask, it shall be done for them by my Father who is in heaven. For where two or three have gathered together in my name, I am there in their midst." Now, I've heard scores of people quote these verses, and usually when they quote them, they believe that the verses are teaching that if they can just find one other person to agree with them in prayer about anything, then that God has promised to give that thing to them. They also believe that verse 20 is saying that if you get at least two or three Christians to gather together in Jesus' name, then Jesus will be there in their midst. But does that mean that if you only are by yourself or with one other person and you're in Jesus' name, that he's not there with you in the midst? It doesn't make sense. I think in order to understand Matthew chapter 18, verses 19 and 20, you have to back up and see the context. You have to go starting in verse 15, 16, 17, and 18. And the reason I say that is because verse 19 starts with the word again. Again, I say to you. Well, that tells us that verses 19 and 20 are connected to the material immediately preceding it. So what are verses 15 to 18 talking about? Well, they're talking about church discipline. They're talking about what the church is supposed to do if a brother sins in the church. In other words, if there's someone in the church that's involved in ongoing, unrepentant sin, the rest of the church has an obligation and a responsibility to discipline that erring brother. Number one, the person who witnesses the sin is to go to him in private and reprove him in private. If the sinning brother repents and listens to that person, then he's won his brother, everything's great, case closed. But number two, if he will not listen to the brother who reproves him, then he is to take one or two more with him so that by the mouth of two or three witnesses, every fact may be confirmed. Now, at this point, bells should be going off in your head because Jesus has just said by the mouth of two or three witnesses. And that's exactly what Jesus was talking about in verses 19 and 20. He was talking about two or three gathered in his name and him being there in their midst. He was saying, if two of you agree on earth about anything that they ask, it shall be done for them by my Father who is in heaven. So two or three are coming up in the passage in verse 19 and 20, but two or three are also coming up in the context immediately preceding it in verses 15 to 18. So what is it teaching? What actually is going on here? Jesus is saying in verses 15 to 18, by the mouth of two or three witnesses to this sinning brother's situation, every fact may be confirmed. Later on, if two of you shall agree on earth about anything that they may ask, it shall be done for them by my Father who is in heaven. He's talking about the two or three witnesses. The two or three witnesses who are involved in this church discipline situation. If they come together and agree in prayer concerning this church discipline situation, God's going to listen and answer that prayer. Also, verse 20, for where two or three, that is the two or three witnesses, have gathered together in Jesus' name in order to decide what to do about this problem in the church. Perhaps they're praying that his sin will not influence the rest of the church like leaven does to a whole lump of dough. Perhaps they're praying that the church will be in unity as to how they are to handle the situation and confront the sinning brother. Whatever their prayer is, when two or three gather together and they pray, God will answer that prayer and the Lord will be there in their midst to bless them and to help them and to support them to carry out his will. We know that carrying out church discipline is very difficult, stressful. Nobody likes to do it. But yet we have the Lord's encouragement that he will be with these two or three witnesses involved in this church discipline situation to enable them to come through, to do the right thing, to be faithful, and to answer their prayers when they pray according to his will concerning the situation. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that's encouraging to you as you study the Bible to make sure you're looking at the context surrounding those verses so that you don't wrench something out of its context and make it say something that it was never intended to say. God bless you today.